Jennifer Aniston has long been known as America's sweetheart, a symbol of charm, resilience, and timeless beauty who defined an entire era of television. By the time she reached her mid-50s, she had already lived multiple lives in the public eye, each one scrutinized, celebrated, and often misunderstood. But when she finally spoke openly and reflected on her past with a quiet honesty, the world paused. There was no dramatic press conference, no sensational headline crafted by tabloids, and no anonymous insider leaking fragments of her story. It was simply Jennifer herself, speaking calmly and directly, revealing a truth that carried the weight of decades. When she described someone as the love of my life, it wasn't said for shock value, it was raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. For those who had followed her journey, it was clear she was referring to Brad Pitt, the man whose name had been intertwined with hers for over 20 years. But what made that moment so powerful wasn't just the statement, it was the timing. For years, Jennifer had maintained a dignified silence through some of the most invasive and relentless media storms imaginable. Now, she was finally opening the door to her truth. To truly understand the depth of her words, it's necessary to go back long before fame ever entered her life. Before she became a household name, before she stepped onto the set of Friends, Jennifer was a young girl growing up in a household that carried more tension than comfort. Born in Sherman Oaks, California, to actors John Aniston and Nancy Dow, her life may have appeared glamorous from the outside, but inside it was far from stable. When she was just 9 years old, her parents' marriage ended and the divorce left a profound mark on her emotional world. Her father's sudden absence created a void that she struggled to understand. But it was her relationship with her mother that left the deepest scars. Nancy Dow was known for her beauty and discipline, but also for her harsh and critical nature. Jennifer would later recall how her mother constantly commented on her appearance, urging her to improve herself in ways that slowly eroded her confidence. These weren't isolated remarks, they were repeated, shaping a narrative in Jennifer's mind that she was never quite enough. As she grew older, those early experiences manifested as emotional wounds that followed her into adulthood. In her 20s, Jennifer openly described her childhood as emotionally damaging, a time when she felt judged rather than nurtured. The situation escalated in 1996 when her mother publicly shared personal details about her life on television, and later published a memoir that further exposed their strained relationship. For Jennifer, this wasn't just a family disagreement, it was a public betrayal. The trust that had already been fragile was shattered completely, leading to a separation that lasted over a decade. For 15 years, mother and daughter did not speak, and during that time, Jennifer carried the lingering pain of rejection and criticism. These experiences quietly shaped her understanding of love, trust, and self-worth, laying a complicated emotional foundation that would later influence her relationships. Despite these challenges, Jennifer found a way to channel her pain into ambition. She moved to New York City, determined to pursue acting. Even though success seemed far from guaranteed, her early years were marked by struggle and uncertainty. She worked various jobs: telemarketing, waitressing, even delivering messages on a bike just to support herself while chasing auditions. The entertainment industry was unforgiving, and rejection became a constant companion. She landed roles in several television pilots, but none of them succeeded. Each failure chipped away at her confidence, reinforcing the insecurities she had carried since childhood. Her role in the low-budget horror film Leprechaun did little to elevate her career, and instead became something she would later look back on with embarrassment. There came a point when she was ready to give up entirely. The dream that once fueled her now felt like an illusion, but in what seemed like a moment of fate, she crossed paths with Warren Littlefield, who encouraged her to keep going. That encouragement proved pivotal. Not long after, she was offered an opportunity that would change her life forever. She auditioned for a new television series and was initially considered for a different role, but the producers saw something unique in her. They cast her as Rachel Green in Friends, a decision that would not only define her career, but also reshape television history. the success of Friends was nothing short of extraordinary. It became a cultural phenomenon, and Jennifer's portrayal of Rachel turned her into an icon. Her hairstyle became a global trend. Her fashion choices influenced millions, and her presence on screen resonated with audiences worldwide. She wasn't just admired, she was loved, but even as her star rose, the emotional scars from her past remained. The validation she received from the world didn't entirely erase the self-doubt that had been instilled in her from a young age. Still, she carried herself with humility and grace, becoming someone people rooted for not just because of her talent, but because of her authenticity. Amid this newfound fame, her personal life began to draw intense attention, especially when she met Brad Pitt. Their relationship quickly became one of the most talked about romances in Hollywood. When they made their public debut, the world was captivated. They seemed perfect together, two successful, charismatic individuals who appeared deeply in love. Their wedding in 2000 was a lavish yet heartfelt celebration, and for a time, they embodied the idea of a modern fairy tale. They supported each other's careers, shared a sense of humor, and spoke openly about their admiration for one another. To the public, they represented hope, love, and stability. However, as with many high-profile relationships, the pressures of fame and evolving personal ambitions began to take a toll. While Jennifer was nearing the end of Friends and considering a quieter life, Brad was exploring more intense and demanding film roles. Their paths, though still connected, were beginning to diverge. When they announced their separation in 2005, it shocked fans around the world. The statement they released emphasized mutual respect and love, but the reality that unfolded in the media told a far more complicated story. Shortly after the split, Brad's relationship with Angelina Jolie became public, sparking widespread speculation and controversy. The timing led many to believe there had been an overlap, and Jennifer found herself at the center of a narrative she had no control over. She was portrayed as the abandoned wife, while rumors circulated about her supposed unwillingness to have children. These claims were not only inaccurate, but deeply hurtful. In truth, Jennifer had always wanted a family, and the suggestion that she had prioritized her career over motherhood added another layer of misunderstanding to an already painful situation. Rather than responding with anger, Jennifer chose to maintain her composure. She avoided public confrontations and instead focused on healing privately. Therapy, close friendships, and personal growth became her anchors during this time. Among those who stood by her was Courtney Cox, whose unwavering support provided comfort and stability. Jennifer's decision to handle the situation with dignity earned her widespread respect, even as the media continued to dissect her every move. In the years that followed, her romantic life remained under intense scrutiny. Relationships with figures like John Mayer brought moments of happiness, but also heartbreak later. Her marriage to Justin Theroux offered a sense of renewal and hope. For a time, it seemed as though she had found a more grounded and private form of love. However, that relationship also came to an end, reinforcing the idea that even the most carefully nurtured connections can face challenges. Throughout all of this, Jennifer continued to evolve, both personally and professionally. Her work on the morning show showcased her depth as an actress, earning her critical acclaim and reaffirming her place in the industry. Yet one of the most profound aspects of her journey was her openness about her struggles with fertility. For years, the media speculated about her personal choices, often framing her as someone who had chosen career over family. In reality, she had been quietly undergoing treatments, hoping to become a mother. When she eventually shared her experience, it resonated deeply with many, shedding light on an issue that is often misunderstood and stigmatized. By speaking her truth, Jennifer reclaimed her narrative. She challenged societal expectations and emphasized that a woman's worth is not defined by her marital status or whether she has children. Her honesty created space for others to share their own stories, fostering a sense of connection and understanding. It was a powerful reminder that behind every public figure is a human being navigating their own challenges, and so, when she finally referred to Brad Pitt as the love of her life. It wasn't a statement rooted in longing or regret, it was an acknowledgement of a chapter that had profoundly shaped her. Love, especially a first love of that magnitude, leaves an imprint that doesn't simply disappear. It becomes part of one's identity, influencing how they view relationships and themselves. Jennifer's words reflected a sense of acceptance, a recognition that while the relationship had ended, its significance remained. Over the years, glimpses of warmth between Jennifer and Brad have occasionally surfaced, sparking renewed interest and speculation. Whether it's a shared laugh at an event or a brief interaction caught on camera, these moments hint at a mutual respect that has endured despite everything. They don't suggest a rekindled romance, but rather a shared understanding of a past that continues to hold meaning today. Jennifer Aniston stands as a symbol of resilience and self-awareness. Her journey has been marked by triumphs and challenges, love and loss, public scrutiny and personal growth. She has learned to navigate her life on her own terms, embracing both her strengths and her vulnerabilities. When she speaks now, it's with a clarity that comes from experience, a willingness to be honest without seeking validation. In the end, her story is not just about fame or relationships. It's about the complexities of being human, about learning to heal from past wounds, and about finding peace within oneself. Her reflection on love is not confined to one person or one moment. It's a broader understanding of what it means to connect, to lose, and to grow. And in sharing that understanding, Jennifer Aniston has given the world something far more valuable than a headline. She has offered a glimpse into the truth of her journey, one that continues to inspire and resonate with people everywhere. As the years moved forward, Jennifer Aniston gradually stepped into a version of herself that was no longer defined by headlines, heartbreak, or public expectations. There was a quiet shift in how she carried her story. Where once there had been silence driven by pain, there was now silence rooted in peace. She no longer felt the need to correct every rumor or respond to every narrative imposed on her. Instead, she began choosing when and how to speak, and more importantly, what truly deserved her energy. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of years spent rebuilding her sense of self, piece by piece. After having it pulled apart in front of the world, her friendships became one of her strongest foundations. The bond she shared with Courtney Cox remained unshakable, a rare example of Hollywood loyalty that had endured fame, time, and personal struggles. These relationships reminded her that while romantic love can be powerful, it isn't the only form of love that sustains a person. There was comfort in having people around her who knew her long before the fame, who saw her beyond the image, beyond the persona that had been created by years of media attention. In many ways, these friendships grounded her in reality when everything else felt like a performance. Professionally, she entered a new era that proved she was far more than the character that made her famous. Her work in the morning show allowed her to explore complex emotions and darker themes, reflecting a maturity that mirrored her real-life experiences. The role wasn't just another job. It was a statement. It showed the world that she had evolved, that she was willing to take risks, and that she had depth beyond the light-hearted roles she was once known for. Critics praised her performance, and audiences saw a different side of her, one that was raw, layered, and unapologetically real. Yet even as her career flourished, the public's fascination with her past never fully faded. The connection between her and Brad Pitt continued to linger in the cultural imagination. Every interaction between them, no matter how brief, became a moment of speculation. When they were seen sharing a laugh backstage at an awards show or exchanging a warm greeting, it reignited conversations that had never truly died. People projected their own hopes onto those moments, imagining a reunion, a second chance, a continuation of a story that had once felt unfinished. But for Jennifer, those moments seemed to carry a different meaning. They weren't about revisiting the past, but about acknowledging it without being controlled by it. There is a certain kind of strength that comes from reaching a place where the past no longer holds power over the present. For Jennifer, That strength was evident in the way she spoke about her experiences. She didn't deny the pain, nor did she attempt to rewrite history. Instead, she embraced it as part of her journey. When she referred to Brad as the love of her life, it wasn't a declaration meant to reopen old wounds. It was an acceptance of what that relationship had been, a chapter that shaped her in profound ways. Both beautiful and painful, love, as Jennifer came to understand it, is not always defined by longevity or permanence. Sometimes its impact is measured by how deeply it changes you. Her relationship with Brad was one of those defining experiences. It taught her about connection, vulnerability, and the reality that even the most seemingly perfect relationships can come to an end. But it also taught her resilience, the ability to rebuild after loss, to find strength in solitude, and to rediscover herself outside of a partnership. As she moved further into this stage of her life, Jennifer began to speak more openly about the idea of fulfillment. For years, society had placed expectations on her, expectations about marriage, motherhood, and what her life should look like. When those expectations weren't met, she was often portrayed as lacking something, as if her story was incomplete. But Jennifer challenged that narrative. She made it clear that fulfillment is not a one-size-fits-all concept. It doesn't have to follow a traditional path, and it doesn't have to align with societal standards. Her honesty about her struggles with fertility became one of the most powerful aspects of her story. By sharing her experiences, she not only addressed years of speculation, but also opened up a conversation that many people are afraid to have. She spoke about the emotional and physical toll of trying to conceive, about the hope and disappointment that comes with each attempt, and about the eventual acceptance that sometimes things don't happen the way we plan. In doing so, she gave a voice to countless individuals who have faced similar challenges, reminding them that they are not alone. There was also a sense of liberation in her words. For so long, her life had been framed by what she didn't have: a husband, children, a traditional family structure. But Jennifer reframed that perspective. She focused on what she did have: a successful career, meaningful relationships, personal growth, and a sense of self that had been hard-earned. She emphasized that her life was full, even if it didn't fit the mold that others expected. In quieter moments, she allowed herself to acknowledge the longing that still existed, the desire for companionship, for someone to share the ups and downs of daily life. Didn't disappear simply because she had found peace, but that longing no longer came from a place of emptiness. It came from a place of openness, a willingness to embrace connection if it happened, without needing it to define her happiness. When she spoke about wanting to come home and fall into someone's arms after a long day, it wasn't a plea for something missing. It was an honest expression of a universal human desire. As time went on, Jennifer's story became less about what had happened to her and more about how she chose to respond to it. She became an example of how to navigate life's